was a beautiful September day. The year was 1984. I was 38 years old. I'm going to be 62 this week. You can do the math. I'd been through a collision between my body and a corn chopper, which I'm still not sure exactly what it is. But probably because of the notoriety of that accident, which happened up in Manitowoc County, I forget the little town that it was, I won the primary election that I had been running in for state senate. So it was this really momentous day in my life, time in my life. And right after that, I was sitting at Fountain Park, and you know now how memory sort of fades over time and melds together a lot of different things that happen, and I don't know if this is all entirely accurate, but this is the way my brain remembers it now. So I got my hot dog from the stand over there, the little lunch counter at Prangies, before it became Boston Store, before it became a vacant lot, before it became whatever it's going to become. And so there I was with my hot dog sitting at some little table before Fountain Park is what it is now. And I was depressed. I was discouraged. I think I was probably afraid. I think I was in fear. One of those now what moments. I mean, who knew? So here I was. Now what? I got this job. I got this family. What am I going to do? So in my mind, I remember this, and I don't know if exactly this is how it happened, but I remember it as talking to Reverend Hoffmeyer. That was the minister of this church at that time. That's what we called the ministers then. Reverend Hoffmeyer was his name. So Reverend Hoffmeyer and I are talking, and I tell him, it's this weirdest thing. I just won this thing that I had invested all of this time and energy in, that hundreds of friends walked in parades, did all sorts of crazy stuff, and now I won, and I'm depressed. And he said, well, that's normal. I said, well, how can that be normal? I should be happy. I should be ecstatic. And he said, no. This happens. It happens to everybody. It happens in the Bible. And we talked about this story that you just heard. And I tell you that story not so much that you know about my history, but so that you know that in my view, one of the reasons this story is in the Bible is to assure you that depression is okay. Depression is a part of our human existence. God made us. God made us, and after sin enters the world, life isn't going to go the way we want it to go. So we get discouraged. We get depressed, sometimes clinically so, where we need medication, but I'm not talking about that extent right now. But I'm just talking about the everyday discouragements of life. Because that's what I think this story is about. For those of you who haven't been able to be with us over the weeks, let me just quickly summarize what happened right before this. Is that Elijah is on this mountain, a true mountaintop experience, battling against 450 prophets of Baal, who is the false idol god that Jezebel, evil Queen Jezebel, married to rotten King Ahab, and they are worshiping both Yahweh, the God of Israel, and Baal, the god of Jezebel's nation. And there's been this politically arranged marriage, but Elijah has defeated them. And so now, Elijah's had this great victory. God has won the day. And Jezebel is now saying, look, I'm going to destroy you, Elijah, just like you did to all of my prophets by the end of the day. And so our strong, brave, courageous Elijah hightails it out of Dodge. So a lot of ministers, when they preach this passage, criticize Elijah and say, hey, what's the matter with you? You just had this great mountaintop experience with God, and now you're running away. What's the matter with him? I say no. You should not criticize Elijah, because we've all been there and we've all done this. And I think that's the point. I don't think the point is about Elijah running away. I think the point is about how God and about how we respond to this depression. How we respond to the things that we don't want to happen in our lives. God does not judge the disciples of Yahweh, of Jesus, who are sometimes afraid, who want to run from life's challenges, who are discouraged to the point of just wanting to quit. God gets it. It's part of the human condition. God gets that sometimes we feel like we're wandering out in the desert praying that God would just end our lives like Elijah did. God gets that sometimes all we really want to do is curl up, go to sleep, wake up, eat and drink, and go back to sleep. God gets it. God gets that sometimes life is just boring. It's routine. It's dull. And so we want to say, is that all there is? God gets it. God gets that we say, God, I'm tired of this job. I'm tired of my marriage. I'm tired of my circumstances. I'm tired of my children. God gets it. And God wants to help you. God gets that when you feel that way, when I feel that way, when we say, just let me hide in a cave and be done with it, God has an answer. So how does God respond, right? That's the question. How do we respond when we're the voice that God sends to others to be with in the times of discouragement and depression? Well, the first thing this story tells us is that you cannot talk somebody out of depression. You can't use the old, cheer up, mate, look at how good you got it. Give them that good old rah-rah speech. That's never cured a soul. You cannot shame them or shock them out of their mood. It's how they are. It's their reality. Jill and I were watching the movie Birdman this week. Now, I have to be careful. Every time I mention a movie in the sermon, I think some people might go out and watch it. So I have to warn you, it has bad language, it has bad circumstances, but, you know, it was an Academy Award-winning movie, and this is what the world sees. This is how the world is. It's a reflection of the world. So if we're going to, here's my rationale. You can disagree with me. But look, we're trying to be the church in the world, right? Not of the world, but in the world. How do we preach to the world if we don't know what the world is doing? We have to at least be aware of it. So be aware it's bad. Watch it if you want. Don't watch it if you don't want to. But it reflects life. So anyway, Birdman. Birdman is a movie about a guy who has been one of these super action heroes. He has lived his adult life in the movies dressed up in a bird outfit with wings, flying around, you know, defeating disasters and protecting the people from all Metropolis, you know, all the traditional action movie stuff, right? All right, so this guy is now done. The sequels are all done. And so now he's trying to figure out what to do with his life. He's trying to put some meaning in his life. So he takes all his money and he invests his money in producing, directing, writing a Broadway show, a drama, starring himself. And his daughter, who has had sort of a rocky relationship with his daughter, I think she's played by Emma Thompson. I don't know if I got that right. But you can Google this. You can put it on YouTube. Just put in YouTube, Birdman, daughter confronts father. You can see the whole thing. See this great scene, great speech. So anyway, here's the deal. The Birdman, washed up movie actor, now wanting to be a movie actor, his daughter says, why are you doing this? You're losing your money. You're wasting everything that you got. You're ruining your relationships with your family. You're ruining your relationships with other friends of yours. Why are you doing this? And he says, I'm doing this because I finally get a chance to do some work that actually means something. To which the daughter replies in this perfectly delivered speech. I can't do it justice. Means something to who? Let's face it, Dad. You're not doing this for the sake of art. You're doing this because you want to feel relevant again. Well, guess what? There's an entire world out there where people fight to be relevant every single day. You're the one who doesn't exist. You're doing this because you're scared to death, like the rest of us, that you don't matter. And you know what? You're right. You don't. It's not important, okay? You're not important. Get used to it. That may be how the world treats depression, discouragement. And it sets up exactly how God does not work. We might think it's some motivational tool for us to give these speeches. If nothing else, it makes us feel better. But that's not how life works. And God knows that. God knows that we struggle, every one of us, to find purpose and relevance, to know our mission. We, as God's children, want to really know, am I really able to make a difference in the world? And then we look at our lives and we say, God, is this all there is? Just let me die. And here's how God responds. Take a nap. You better take a nap. And when you wake up, God's going to send some angel to give you some food and something to drink. Some of you are those angels. I know a couple I'm looking at right now who are those angels who just keep bringing food and drink to somebody who's really discouraged with life, in a bad place. Keep being an angel. And then God says, take another nap. And then God says, okay, get up, eat some more. And then God says, you know what, Elijah, let's go for a walk. Let's go for a really long walk. And so for 40 days and for 40 nights, Elijah wanders through the desert in search of direction. He ends up in a cave. That's another way God gives strength for the journey. He gives us permission to take a long time to heal. You know, it's so frustrating when you're God or when you're a family member and you have someone you love who's depressed. You want to say, snap out of it. Doesn't work that way. This can be a lifelong problem, or it can be a 40-day problem. But God says, let's just keep walking. And sometimes He brings us to a cave because He gives us permission to take a long time to heal. Our bodies and our brains need time. God is never in a hurry. You see, life is a journey. It's not a race. Life is a journey. It's not a race. It takes us from these mountaintop experiences, which happen once every great while, 1984. Once every lifetime, maybe 2, 3, 4 times. You get a mountaintop experience. And then you're wandering around in the desert, where we spend most of our life. And sometimes we spend time hiding in caves. So friends, if you're in a cave today, don't feel that God has abandoned you. Maybe God brought you to the cave to heal you. If you have a friend or a loved one who today is dwelling in a cave, treasuring darkness, don't try to force them out just yet. Bring them some bread, some water, let them sleep, and then ask God to use you to be the healer in that situation. And what happens next is one of the great pictures of the Bible. Elijah is in this cave, still discouraged, depressed. And then comes this tornado-like wind. The Bible says a rock-shattering wind. But there's no God there. And then there's an earthquake, and then again, God isn't found. And then there's this fire raging over the mountain, and still no God. And there Elijah is cowering in the cave, and he hears a whisper. We don't know what the whisper is. He just hears a whisper. And whatever was in that whisper, in that silence, in that what some translators have described as gentle quietness or gentle silence, it was gentleness. God comes to him with a gentle whisper. And Elijah puts his cloak over his face, and then he steps out finally of the cave because he's had this whispering hope. And then God asks him a question that defines Elijah and that defines your life and my life. I love the way that Paul read it. I think it is exactly the way God said it. What are you doing here? What are you doing here, Elijah? Do you see how that question defines your life? What are you doing here? God didn't get an answer from Elijah. I don't even know if he expected one. And maybe God doesn't get an answer from you. And maybe God doesn't expect one. But do you know what God does next? He says, go back the way you came. You see, God gives Elijah a new mission. Now, I love the way that one writer who I was reading this week, he cites from Mother Teresa. And I want to find this because I want to read it exactly like it is. Mother Teresa, you know, she's the one who worked with all of the down and outs of life, the true outcasts. She writes this, here's a message for you, for me. Always be faithful in little things. Always be faithful in little things, for in them our strength lies. To God, nothing is little. Practice fidelity in the least things, not for their own sake, but for the sake of the great thing of the will of God. And that's what I want to emphasize. You see, it's the little things. If I may pick on Ruth, it is Ruth who says, it is Ruth who says, I'm going to take off on Monday, and then when I call her on Saturday, oh, by the way, we have another funeral Tuesday. Can you be there? I'll be there without hesitation. You see, she's faithful in the little things. Jordan is faithful in the little things. Rich is faithful in the little things. Kathy is faithful in the little things. All of you who will help Monday and Tuesday. Do you see, we're doing little things, right? But to those families, it's a huge thing. To all the people who worked in VBS, the people who made the little snacks downstairs. Were they changing the world? You know, were they affecting the outcome of the vote in England? No. But they were transforming a child's life with a little message and a little snack. That's the will of God. And so if you're faithful in the little things, do you not see what a great thing it is that you are doing the will of God? What could be a greater mountaintop experience than doing the will of God? What are you doing here for God? You know, maybe you need a career path, a new career path. Maybe not. I don't know that it matters. It might. I'd love to talk to you about it. Maybe you're troubled in your marriage. Maybe you're wondering about marriage. I'd love to talk to you about it. Maybe you should retire. Maybe not. Maybe we should talk about it. Maybe you should move. Maybe not. Maybe we should talk about it. You see, the whispers of hope can still be heard if we will take the time to listen. If out of our busied lives we will let God's ordered word speak. Friends, God is with you in the journey. That's what this story is about today. Each step of the way, as you run from life, as you wander in the desert, as you hide in the cave, God is sending angels to give you strength for the journey. Bread, water, sleep, and there will be more. Next week is part 2 of this message. Come and hear the end of it. And then he sends you an encouraging whisper of hope, which I hope this part 1 of our message is for you today, especially those of you who are struggling in the cave. But don't miss this part of the message. The cave is not the end of the journey. It's a stop along the way because there is more to be done. What are you doing here, friend? What are you doing here? Amen.